It is time for our second session, Memory Technology for Humanity. This session delves into the synergy between memory technology and heritage studies, exploring how innovative technologies can preserve and promote cultural heritage. We will speak about the role of digital archives, AI, and neurotechnology in safeguarding historical narratives and artifacts. We will discuss how these technologies can enhance the study and the dissemination of cultural heritage, ensuring its accessibility for future generations. So let's start with the first question. Is this new wave of engagement of artificial intelligence and digital technology in culture and education a challenging development for the cultural heritage? I would like to have Miss Vanessa Menendez Montero to start.
Wow, thank you. Actually, I have to make a disclaimer because, yeah, I'm a lawyer, and my knowledge about the development of AI and digital technology in culture is quite limited. Nevertheless, from what I could reflect on this, I think we have a challenge in terms of authenticity. So how can we know that the information that we have from a digitalized monument, let's say, or a piece of artwork is true? And also what David said, like, how can we be sure that the narratives attached to that monument digitalized are not one-sided, but takes the viewpoint of multi actors, no, more than one actor. So here I think experts have to take like kind of Hippocratic oath, like doctors, whereby they promise that the creation and the use of data they are going to use for cultural heritage matters, it's fair and it's done in a scientific manner. So here I think overall it's a good development. We don't know the reach of AI, the consequences of it. I think also in terms of the law, we are a bit behind all of the developments. We don't understand those developments, and I think we need to closely work with engineers, with data scientists, and so on and so forth, to fully understand and prevent those possible downsides or negative outcomes.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. What do you think, Mr. David Cotterell, about that?
Thanks, Olga. I think, I mean, there are obviously advantages, enormous advantages for students and for academics in study and access to vastly increased amounts of data and information. But I suppose if you look at the ethics that govern academic research, it is interesting when you're looking at AI. My understanding of AI is that it's drawing from published sources, collating information and trying to synthesize to provide a narrative which appears to be common or supported by other sources, which is essentially the same role as most academic researchers, which are looking at published sources, evidence bases, trying to also do primary research, and then provide a subjective synthesis of that in order to support an argument which is developed. The difference is, if you're an academic, you need to publish all your sources. You need to acknowledge where it comes from. And you need to also kind of publish your own name. And that the first principle of historiography is that you read the biography of the historian before you read the history of Stalingrad. You want to know whether the historian has bias or whether they have a contextual background, which means that they're more able to understand some concepts than others, or whether they might possibly have informed their research through contradictory perspectives. The risk with AI is that there is an assumption it draws together all of the world's knowledge and provides a summative analysis. In reality, it can't possibly be representing all ideas equally, and it shouldn't be. And the algorithm for qualitative analysis is not necessarily published or comprehensible by the consumer. So for me, the real risk is not understanding the sources of information and the mathematics and the algorithm that's used to try and decide which arguments gain salience within the dominant thesis.
Thank you very much, David. Shall we go on with Hara? Hara Kokiu.
Oh, thank you, Olga. So, of course, it is a wonderful monster, AI. I'm referring to AI, and it has all these extremely important, advantages. It enhances accessibility, disseminates cultural assets, and does that rapidly. It allows us for immersive and engaging educational experiences, and everyone knows about these things. The problem is not in the emerging technology per se. The problem is in the user anyways. And what Spiros said before, and I think all of the speakers emphasized in one or the other way, is the problem of responsibility, the problem of accountability, and the problem of morality. There are a lot of things. AI is a huge issue and a huge challenge especially for the philosophy department, for the field of philosophy, because of all these dangers and risks concerning data privacy, the digital divide, the potential loss of, more nuanced aspect of traditions in favor of a more standardized digital presentation. So the problem is the bias. That's the big question. I don't have to offer any solutions on this, but the problem is, the big question is, how can we fight the bias? And we definitely need to start from the designing of all these technologies. And it's impossible to imagine that we can have a machine that is totally bias-free, but we can mitigate, as much as possible, all these risks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hara. Let's continue with Miss Claudia Grünberg.
Yes, thank you. And I can also speak, like Vanessa, you said that before, I'm also not an expert at all in AI, but I can reflect on the question just from my experience in working with especially young people and cultural heritage. And of course, young people tend to be very excited of using any form of AI or digital technology to work with the heritage side. And of course, we use that always when we can, and we use tablets if we can, and all these things. But this is just another tool, and it does not, in no case I have ever seen, replace the experience you have at a site. So I think digital technology in this can definitely be a great addition, because what it provided for the context of the project I was working in, we first had the on-site experience, and then we met in an even larger group with different people who have all had an on-site experience, and we discussed it. So that brought an extra layer of reflecting, of connecting to other people, of talking about an experience, but it can in no case happen without having had the experience in the first place. So I think this is the one thing. And then also the other thing I have to say, cultural heritage online, we have a big gap between shiny Google Arts products giving us highlight and amazing, great quality images. And on the other hand, let's just, for instance, take UNESCO's World Heritage List. If I tell a student to access that and to research something, this is complete technical UNESCO-ish language that no one would ever understand, with maps that nobody can read. So there's a big gap between very, very shiny, very monothematic, homogeneous pictures of heritage that completely are not complex, are not multi-perspective and nothing, and very technical on the other hand. So we are missing very much something that young people and people in general can connect to, where they can form and see different perspectives. And I think that is definitely a challenge, and we need to kind of bridge that gap at some time. Thank you.
We hope so, for the best. Thank you very much, Claudia. Let's continue with Mr. Piotr Miskalowski.
Thank you so much, Olga. The discussion is highly interesting, and still the first session is resonating in me. And I think that what Kara also brought, the Clifford Geertz theory on anthropological theory and culture, and I could only follow his thick description, the additive theory on culture that entails this and that elements, etc. I used to follow the Neo-Kantianism description of culture, which is a life according to values, something quite essential and quite easy to grasp, that all kinds of activities are there. And then it led me to this experience of reading the diaries from the journey of Mark Twain. You remember, it was roughly 100 years ago, and he was satirically commenting on the Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci. And he said that the original is not bringing any type of values. I have seen those copies that they are much better than in the original. Of course, he was totally ironic, but what he meant is also that I believe that if we say that all roads are leading to Rome, I believe that it's really great that we could have an AI and other technologies, VR, that are gaining accessibility, are gaining our possibilities for inclusion, giving us tools, and also sometimes they are expanding on the experience. But of course, nothing, as Claudia said, nothing can be comparable with being in front of the original. Nevertheless, the roads, the paths we take are different, and to me, this is something quite essential. And one more example, you meant the Eiffel Tower, and I just recall this another theory of the description, the division between the information and the view, like what we read, what we digest before, and then we see it. It refers to Twain, but then I said to myself, Acropolis, Parthenon, it has been so much transformed in the centuries. When you go to Acropolis Museum, you see that it was also a mosque. It was like many different things, but did it change the root of the European culture, the origin? Did it make something bad to it in the very end? I think that we still connect to the root of this monument, and I think that playing with the culture, what Kara also said, like so many contexts, pop culture, everything. It's not harming in my opinion. It's just that we humans tend to be making those kind of interactions, and throughout the centuries those interactions are quite different. So now we have AI, and I would not be dramatizing about it, because this is just the progress. We cannot stop it. So that's my point of view.
Thank you so much, Piotr. And let's also continue with Spiriton Kogas.
Yes, it's a difficult discussion because many people today find through this debate about AI, old roles like the manichaeism that humanity loves so much to use. For example, the good and the evil, and the technology that is coming to replace humanity, and all this story. And personally, I am completely against all this mania that every time tries to find new ideas, or people just to burn them because science progress. The most important thing is why it's challenging. I believe that we have to stay on the positive potentials. For example, if we want to create projects on a global level that we are going to use artificial intelligence or metaverse, and create tools and platforms that will engage much more people and much more citizens, and from this point of view, to support the accessibility and an authentic inclusivity for education, for an educational approach of cultural heritage. One more thing could be using or inspiring from Hara's presentation, the imagination that artificial intelligence contributes to a new potentiality for the imagination in cultural heritage. For example, if I'm not wrong, in many museums already in France, in Germany maybe, In Great Britain, people can visit, certain rooms, and just through avatars of artificial intelligence, young people have the opportunity, for example, to listen personalities of the history to retell a new narrative for their life, Jeanne d'Arc, or Napoleon the Great, or Buddha. This, of course, maybe it sounds a little bit outside of reality, or just a hyperbolic approach. But I think that if we are staying to use this technological contribution of AI, especially for opening of a more democratic accessibility for the heritage education experience, it could be something that grounded all of us, and make the whole discussion more realistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spirido. So we shall continue with the next question. Should the rapid growth of memory technology be internationally regulated to support humanities education rather than threaten its foundations? Let's have Mr. Piotr Michalowski.
Thank you, Olga. Again, the question is very related to the first one, and especially to the discussion that we just had. And personally, I do not believe in any type of regulations that could, oppose some rules, or just stop the progress to be, happening in front of our eyes. I was rereading a biography of Freddie Keppard. He was the cornet player, the jazz, one of the forefathers of jazz in the early 20th century. And since I remembered it quite vaguely from my jazz education years, and he was one of the first to refuse being recorded by the Victor Talking Machine Company. They offered this to him in 1919, so let's say 100 and few years ago. Because he was fearful that the people would steal his stuff. A few years after, 1926, he finally did some recordings on vinyl, but he was recorded in the history as one who, when recording, he was also covering his hands because he didn't want anybody to be seeing how he's playing. So I think that this sort of a fear that it's quite natural, and I think that it's happening to all the decades in humanity. But of course, when we turn back to history 100 years ago, seems to be like what the people were thinking at those times. And when they will, in 100 years time from now, listen to our discussions, some they will just, in my opinion, quite amusingly laugh, because they would say, yeah, you cannot change this. You cannot just stop it. I mean, this is part of the beliefs of the humanity. Curiosity, the essence of philosophy, is essentially accompanying us, and it will just be there. So I don't believe that any type of regulations are going to stop this sort of progress, and we just have to embrace it. I like the category of embracing, because embracing means something positive, but we have to embrace it like with awareness. So that's my reflection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. Shall we go on with Miss Vanessa Menendez Montero?
Yes, thank you. I felt somehow called because Piotr wants me to stop working as an international lawyer. But jokes apart, yeah, I take the opposite side. I think absolutely yes, we should regulate this, but not in a manner that stops the progress, but yes, in a manner that limits its consequences for our fundamental rights. I think it's challenging because, as I said before, how do we regulate something that we don't know, and we don't know how it works, and we don't know what consequences it will have? So it will take some time. Just in March, the European Parliament enacted or adopted this Artificial Intelligence Act. And now, for instance, we and the university, maybe Jana can relate, we don't have a protocol for people who use ChatGPT. but they use it, and it's been here for a long time. So I think, okay, we are not fully aware. We should not stop any progress that can be potentially very beneficial for everyone, but we should take into account that there are consequences, maybe intentional or non-intentional, derived from the use of AI, and we should prevent it from, breaching our fundamental rights, especially the right to education, if I may. And I have, in order to kind of track the bias, it would be nice to pay attention to financing of these technologies. What is the source? And also to involve big technologies in here. They have to have responsibility apart from states. So yeah, this is my intake. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Mr. David Kotteren?
I struggle with this one, really. When I read the question, I was drawn to Isaac Asimov's rules for robotics. And I remember when nanotechnology was the big thing, that everyone was terrified of something called grey goo, that if nanobots could reproduce themselves, then the whole world would be covered in nanotechnology. And there was a talk in academic circles and artistic circles of trying to come up with Asimov-type rules for nanotechnology. The fact is that regulation tends to come behind innovation, and we've seen that with kind of most technologies and even weapon systems. And I think what's likely is that there will need to be some regulation, as we've seen with kind of things which can be used for cause terrible harm, like chemical weapons and nuclear weapons. Robotics, there's big movement to try and regulate the use of autonomous robots within warfare, and AI could be used for target allocation, other kinds of things, which are well beyond simply kind of freedom of innovation, but then encroaching into the real human space we live. So there will need to be some, but I think what's interesting is probably that the key thing is what other people have mentioned, which is that while we're working out where are the risks, is to maintain a kind of mindfulness and a kind of awareness. When the telephone was invented, people probably felt it threatened human interaction. When the pandemic happened, we thought we didn't need to meet in person. When the internet was developed, we thought that we might not be able to cite data anymore. We can evolve to understand both how to cope with technology and also how to recognize that the technology doesn't substitute for all other experience and ideas. I think at the moment, the risk is that people assume that AI provides a comprehensive solution to challenging, kind of problems of thought, and that you can simply go to that. But as we begin to realize the limitations of what it can do, and potentially the agency for what we can do, which it will never be easily kind of replaced by algorithmic approximation, we'll work out where the boundaries are. My intention is probably to be kind of the idea that somehow you allow for experimentation and innovation, but that you keep a watching brief both on your own kind of misunderstanding of what's being developed, and also society does, in terms of making sure that it doesn't impact on vulnerable.
Thank you very much, David. Shall we go on with Ms. Harakokiu?
Sure, but of course, I think I'm already covered by these insightful things you said. My intuition agrees with what Piotr said. I'm struggling to find it, natural or reasonable to set boundaries to human curiosity, if you want. We can't do that. We can't stop it. On the other hand, life kicks in. And as Vanessa said, I have a very bad experience with students already abusing AI in different forms of AI, which indicates the fact that we cannot actually, or at least not all of us globally, are able to use freedom in a proper way. And, I think I tend to say that it might be a good idea to attempt some, or at least try to be on the same page on some foundational basic things also it's extremely challenging. Vanessa knows, is an expert on that. It's extremely challenging to implement legal frameworks that work internationally, even when it comes to to research projects. So I don't think that it would be an easy thing, first of all, to do it. It would be extremely challenging. But I think it might be useful. Going back to Kant, Kant, he loved freedom, but he also loved the universal moral law. And for Kant, what is freedom? Freedom for Kant is not the ability to act as you want, to act otherwise, is the appreciation that we all have that, but we respect the universal moral law, and thus we don't actually act in a way that violates this law. So you see, it's a meta thought, a meta concept. So I'm not, again, I'm not afraid of the machines. I'm not afraid of any technologies. I'm afraid of the human, of the power of the human, mind, if you want. And it's exciting to discover new things. It's absolutely, no one can stop that, but maybe we can, regulate it to some extent. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hara. Shall we go on with Claudia Grunberg?
Yes, thank you. I guess I will leave the international regulation to the lawyers and the enthusiast on the other hand. But what I would like to say is, because I think we are all more or less in research and in practice of cultural heritage. So what I think is important, going back to what pretty much everyone has said in their speeches, was the connection of heritage and identity. And while this connection is widely acknowledged, and we all know that identity and heritage belong together, they inform each other, it is nevertheless, there's still a lack of how is this identity work actually taking place? What is needed for this identity work to happen? And now memory technology coming in this, we would need to ask the question, so what is the role of memory technology? Does it harm? Is it beneficial? What is the potential in this heritage work, in making a relation between heritage and identity? And I think this is just not covered at all, or I'm also not aware. Maybe there might be some great research on that already, but it is at least not very widely available. And I think this, being researchers in cultural heritage, would need to be the first task to understand before we talk about then regulation that we, of course, need to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Let's move on further with Mr. Spiridopoulos.
Yes, I think that the memory technology is not something new. In a manner of speaking, for example, all the religions were the first memory technology systems. And if you want to speak from a scientific point of view, all the religions of humanity approach all the questions of human existence outside of any kind of dividing, hatred, and conflict. But somehow, the political development of humanity used these memory technology systems, according to my opinion, and brought them on the table of the conflict, which is a very crucial issue for if you want to study the course of the human history. So today, from this point of view, we somehow should find a way to not live again this kind of memory technology used as a tool for continuing new conflicts and a new kind of hatred. And this is, for me, the most challenging thing for the scientific, for the world and international scientific community, first of all, to broaden the whole discussion beyond the artificial intelligence about the use of the memory as something that should defend the humanity as a value. So this is the whole point, the whole essence for me. From this point of view, if we need regulations, and who is going to bring or make these regulations, why not, is an open discussion. But the experience taught us that if the regulations coming from the states or from alliance of states that wanted again to convince humanity that the one narrative of civilization against the other narrative of civilization is better my narrative from your narrative, yes, of course, we don't need regulations from this kind of agencies. So from a citizen's point of view, and citizenship and global citizenship, we need to not feel afraid to open the whole discussion about the regulation, about the agenda, about the memory technology, about everything that we should do in order to redefine what human rights means today in the 21st century. Thanks.
Thank you, Spiridon. And finally, can we say that this explosion of this memory technology is ideal for strengthening the global equality in education access and the citizens' reuse of heritage as a human right? We would like to have Ms. Vanessa Menendez Montero.
Thank you, Olga. I would like to have a positive intake on here, but the issue is that I read a lot of things already, so I take a critical view, because who has the necessary technologies to develop the material and also to grant access to cultural heritage? Well, I think here we are replicating a global pattern where the global north have the necessary means to develop everything else. But what about, of course, the access to this education, cultural education in, I don't know, a town in the middle of Nigeria, right? So I think the new technologies are important, but we should also pressure states to share and to cooperate in terms of technology. And of course, this is a profitable industry, so it's not easy. And one of my concerns when it comes, for instance, to this whole new debate on restitution of looted cultural property, right, from former metropole to the colonies, right? One of the arguments that I read was, okay, we can develop technology and give these people in the middle of Nigeria a replication of the objects that I have here in the museum of X state in the global north. And this, I think it's extremely wrong, and also contradicts this notion that Claudia, about, well, this doesn't replace the actual experience. And while we have objects in ethnicity museums that maybe are important for communities, we should not rely on technologies to just not give them back. And I think that's my main concern.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Shall we go on with Mr. David Cotterell?
Thank you. I mean, I think people have said before in other questions and in their presentations of the enormous value in terms of access to each other's perspectives, so artifact, cultural heritage, beyond simply the environment that you happen to be part of. There is an issue, I think, in terms of it. There's benefit, but on its own, it's superficial. In that, if we have, agree with Vanessa, I think there are risks with us assuming that this gives us equal access, not only based on equal privileged access to technology or to the mediums of consumption, but also in that the things that are sharing are enough for us to understand about each other. We have a tendency as humans to kind of value what we can measure and document. And if it's hard to document or to represent, we talk about it less, and we don't necessarily kind of try and attribute value to it. So we value the artifacts, we value the written records, the recordings, but the non-verbal communication, the social interaction, the contextual kind of value of an object, the way in which a language might have evolved through behavior and environment, and the way in which it might still be dynamically evolving is something which might be missing from the record that's shared. We might end up kind of possibly extrapolating from our own understanding of a limited experience of other cultures, what that object, what that record, what that kind of testimony actually means. So the danger, I say, is that while this provides enormous opportunity for us to see how artifacts and cultural kind of behaviors challenge and contradict our own assumption of universal kind of shared experience, the real risk is that it might allow us to relax our desire to really develop proper understanding. Part of the challenge is to recognize how cultural heritage can change our own experience of self, as well as simply educate ourselves about others. And that's something which is hard to do through digital facsimile. But it can be something which enables us to become curious as long as those other means of engagement are still available.
Thank you, David. Shall we go on with Harakotiu?
David gave so profound insights that I'm afraid I'm gonna just give oversimplified claims now. But this question was an easy no for me. Definitely not ideal. I mean, at least at this moment. Claudia said before, it's just a tool, and I totally agree. I think it's a very accurate description, just a tool and an imperfect tool at this point. But a good tool, it's a good starting point, and it has potential, a great potential, but there are a lot of ifs. There are a lot of requirements that we need to meet before using memory technology to promote global equality. Otherwise, it will fail. And a couple of these requirements have to do with bridging the digital divide, with ensuring widespread digital literacy. From my experience at the university, most professors don't even know what ChatGPT is, and it's one of the simplest, tools that AI offers. They don't even know how to use it, how to address, issues coming from it. So we're talking about the university now, not about, a household or something that, I mean that we definitely need to secure that people know about these things, the dimensions, the possibilities, they know how to use them. Plus, these most important things that David mentioned, there is this concern. I'm not saying that, we can address it to how can we maintain cultural sensitivity? How can we, and of course, all the legal aspects, how can we, and moral aspects, can we respect ownership rights? And, secure, to some extent at least, sustainable regulation. All these ifs, if we can meet all these ifs, I think it's a very good tool. I will use Claudia's, description here, and we can, definitely, we can move on to magnificent possibilities in the future. Sure, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Hara. Let's move on with Ms. Claudia Grunberg.
Yeah, thank you. What a difficult question, I have to say. I mean, the reuse of heritage as a human right in itself is a difficult question, let alone the digital perspective in it. What I think is reusing heritage from a human rights perspective, also bringing that in, we have so many different heritage communities around the world that have a very different perspective on what using the heritage means and how human rights are connected there. So if you have indigenous people, they will deal with the heritage very different from local communities in more the northern part of the globe. And I hope that digital technology could potentially provide access that is not right there now everywhere. So that is just assuming and hoping that this could help. But what I would also like to do is just as food for thought to turn this whole thing around a bit and say, heritage is a human right, yes, but what we also need is a human rights-based approach on heritage education. And this very often gets a bit lost. I feel what I mean is that very often when we go on in heritage education, we have a very fixed idea on what we want students to learn. We want them to know that the Cologne Cathedral is the most amazing monument because that in its high and you can perceive it from there, and it took such 100 years, centuries to build it and all the things. What we don't consider is that teaching heritage is a pedagogical situation, and that there is the other on the other side, the learner, the young girl on the Eiffel Tower who wants everything else but learning about Mr. Eiffel and his life right now because she has a complete different mindset. What I mean is we create pedagogical situations without much reflecting on what is education, how are human rights in education, that we don't overwhelm everyone, but we really think about who's next to us, who are we talking to, and what are their needs. And I think that is really, so just switching it around. And yeah, I would just like to give that a bit more thought in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Let's move on further with Mr. Piotr Michalowski.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you all for the great insights and great points to this discussion, and to a very not easy question. Well, from the triad of the questions, I think that this one could easily fall into some isms, as said, or some misleading discussions. And I would say, like a statement, that the culture and the cultural heritage, it's about experiencing. And I would say that this differs it from another elements like skills development, etc. All types of discussions that I am having daily with colleagues, that they are willing to put up front the VR, the metaverse tools that will enable some underprivileged regions to be, having the educational opportunities, or places with disasters happening, having, I don't know, a very short-term training courses certified on people that we don't need to travel there. We just use the headset, and some very profound training course. But at the same time, in my opinion, really the cultural heritage, it's something different. It has a different material. I'm all the time having also those discussions from here and there about people who are abusing the mobile phones at the, I don't know, a concert, and that they are saving for later the experience. It's quite astonishing and quite surprising. And of course, they want to share it with the others. This is the need, most probably, but also to keep those, I don't know, emotions for later on. But I mean, the most important is here and now, in my opinion, and something that cannot be replaced is really this togetherness brought by, people sitting in the circle, and they can share, exchange, and some kind of a synergies and values are just emerging. So I think that what also we said at the previous question, that we tend to be believing that the technology will be used in a good way, has on the opposite side this, if I may quote the pop culture, the appetite for destruction, if I may say, that the humanity tends to over abuse something that was already invented, and then let's go further on, let's cross another border, let's go beyond. So I think that I would finish with Kant, of course, as you brought him, that there is this starry sky above me, but the moral right inside of me. I think that this is the essence of also very fast cars. People were telling that it's not about using it, but about the possibility of using this power. And of course, some they go beyond it, and it can tragically finish. But at the same time, I think that we can never regulate this in the human personality, that there is this tension, like we say, the from medieval history, I don't know, the over fight of the carnival with the feasting season, and the feast over fighting the carnival. Like, we are all the time somehow split between those two. And we'll never, in my opinion, conquer it, but this is how life is all about. I mean, this is how we are also formed. Yeah, I just believe that we'll be finding another and refining and rethinking new modes in 100, 200, 300 years from now. And it's great to be talking today with you. It's like Anno Domini 2024, and we have this possibility to capture the moment, but at the same time, ahead of us, great worlds are, so yeah, that's my point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Piotr. And let's finally finish this wonderful discussion with Mr. Spiridon Kogas.
Yes, it's fantastic, the whole discussion. I think that the first serious contribution for global education is to use the digital technology and all this digital evolution today in order, first of all, to support the global invisible to be visible. To bring the people that coming from the global south, from Africa, from Asian communities, to something that many times in Europe or generally in the Western world, we use it that is a physical condition, but it's not like that. So the first step is to make projects and to work this kind of scientific evolution to be really accessible to all these people. And of course, to make all the necessary preparational, educational work in order to support these people and these boys and girls from the underdeveloped countries that they do not have water, they do not have food. But at the same time, we have to insist that this kind of scientific evolution, first of all, should be really inclusive. The second thing is that we have to be more innovative in order to break the old narratives. For example, it's a very good opportunity, this technology, to support new projects in order to have in the European educational systems the point of view about the history from an Asian perspective, from an African perspective, from a Latin American perspective, and the European students to learn not only the European perspective, but all the perspectives about the global history and the evolution of phenomena, sciences, and the contribution of each civilization. And the opposite, this technology could support also in Asia, in Africa, and other continents to learn not only about the European imperialism and the European colonization, but the other aspects also of the European culture and heritage and humanity. And if we are trying to create projects that concentrate the whole scientific objective data from all around the world and be very, very, very calm and sober in order to consider them and infiltrate them against any kind of dividends and try to dare how could be a new narrative for humanity, I think that this kind of technology could be very useful. Just imagine that a positive aspect that already I think Piotr mentioned before, we experienced through the digital connection and something that we are doing at this moment is, first of all, the right to break the isolation of borders. And this break of isolations of borders that technology brought to us, and because of internet revolution or informatics revolution, it's something that was very, very dangerous for the nationalist perspectives, for any kind of borders that are inside intelligence. The first thing that break the technological revolution was the borders of the mind and the borders of the intelligence. I think that from this point of view, yes, we have to be optimistic if we want, of course, to take the necessary initiatives for this scientific revolution too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Spiridon. Now our wonderful discussion came to an end, and we would like to thank you all for being with EdHeroes Greece Hub sessions, and also many thanks to EdHeroes. Thank you very much.